What's up world, my name is Matt and I make videos about thinking better, doing better, and being better. Writing is more impactful than it's ever been with the fast and instant distribution that we have available to us. Thanks internet. I think that by writing better, you can think better, and then as you start to think better, you also start to write better. It's a bit of a cyclical thing. If there's one key thing you get from this video, it's that by offloading your thoughts onto a piece of paper, it allows you to critically examine them and freeze them in time. You've only got so much working memory in your brain, and so if you don't offload, then it makes it a lot harder to start critically analyzing your thoughts. Make it easy, write it down. If writing's not your thing, I totally get that. It's not really my thing either, but I'm working on it. There's a couple things you can do. One thing that I do is I make videos, like this one. I also sometimes record audio notes. Those are good options, but the thing with writing is that you can physically see it, and I think you're more likely to go through and edit the individual components of it. The great thing about writing is that as you start to write, you realize that the scope of what you know may be different than what you thought you knew. You also can find holes in your logic and thinking, which I find personally very helpful. And all this is great, you can write it down, but in order to get better and think better, you have to know how, so I'm going to jump into that now. The thinking process. Thinking is an action. You're doing it right now. And it's constantly changing. As I mentioned in my introduction video, it's the mind that never shuts up. Now, by writing things down, you can bring them into your physical reality. A thought stands alone, static in time, when it's written down. It's frozen. And words on a page are unchanging if left untouched. But by writing your thoughts down, you can now challenge them, you can fact check them, you can edit them, and you can change them. Over time, as you start editing your thoughts on paper, I think you start to edit them in your mind, as long as you're internalizing them. No matter how you digest a thought, so whether you write it down, you listen to it, you watch yourself back, I think the criteria for a good thought is the same. There are three things that I want to dive into that I think help make for better thoughts. Clarity, conciseness, certainty. The thought should be clear. One should use common words to say uncommon things. Arthur Schopenhauer said that. The reason this is important is for a thought to be good, it needs to be received. And any noise will get in the way of a clear message. Ways of avoiding noise could be things like picking the right medium, having a logical flow to your work, good spelling and grammar. And I think one of the most important things for clarity is readability. And a good tool you can use is the Gunning Fox Index, which helps tell you, when you put your writing through it, the average number of years of education required for someone to understand your work. And the index for the blog post that I wrote down below was an 8.5, so not too bad. The key thing is to not use big words where you don't need them, and I think it's also important to limit the number of words in your sentences. Winston Churchill was known for having very clear, readable writing, and in a lot of his addresses, he used very simple words. And in my article below, you can read some of it. Once your thoughts are clear, you want them to be concise. I apologize for such a long letter. I didn't have time to write a short one. Mark Twain. A person's time is limited, and your writing should reflect that. But simply, this means no unnecessary words, and keeping your writing concise will keep your reader's attention. If a person's not giving you their attention, then it does not matter what you write. I mean, if you're writing to think better, to analyze your own thoughts, then you don't want to bore yourself either. So remember one thing, get to the point, cut out the unnecessary. But, and there's a bit of an asterisk to this, is that sometimes writing needs to be a bit more fluffy, a little more dynamic, a little more interesting, especially when you're telling a descriptive story. You just don't want to overdo it. And if you find yourself writing a lot of long sentences, then maybe question how much you really understand the subject. You don't know what you know until you try to express it. Michael Covington. The third thing that I think makes for a good thought is certainty. Strive to provide the truth, and if you're thinking from first principles like I talked in my last video, you're probably doing a good job of this. And I say strive because that's the goal. There's always going to be new information, new ways of looking at things, but you need to try your best and do your best. Truthfulness helps with persuasiveness, but it's not necessary. However, truth prevails, although other narratives can be quite persuasive as well. By reading your writing back, you can check for factfulness, you can do some more research, and you can learn new things. After all, it's critical that your writing is certain. We are human, but if you keep improving, then I think you're going the right way. Now that I have discussed a couple ideas on thinking well, I wanted to talk about the writing process. So I think there are 4 steps to the writing process, and you can incorporate those 3 ideas on how to think better into your writing. Number 1 is planning. which I like to call the brain dump. You've already decided on a topic, so start writing and get all your ideas on paper. You gotta pull them out of your brain. You're only gonna know so much about this topic before you've gotta start going to external sources, and that's fine. But the important thing here is to get all of the current thoughts you're holding in your head down on that piece of paper. And depending on how much you know about the topic, after you've done your original brain dump, you may want to go to step number 3 next, which is research. But I'll get to there in 1 sec. You're not writing for clarity or conciseness at this point, and the order of it doesn't matter. You're just trying to get everything that's in your mind on that paper, freezing it in time. That brings us to step 2, which is drafting, or starting to organize your work. Once your brain dump is completed, you're going to want to start logically organizing your work. I look for themes and similarities and things that contrast, and what I do is I start by putting the work under different headings. I cut and paste, I move things around, and I start organizing it. I like to think of them as buckets, and some buckets of my ideas and thoughts are going to be fuller than others, which will bring us to step 3, research. Now that you've got all your thoughts down, you've organized them a bit, you're going to find gaps, and you're going to want to address those gaps. And unless you're an expert with a phenomenal memory on the topic you're writing about, you're going to have to do some research. This is actually my favorite part, because I get to learn something more about the topic. And what sometimes happens, as you'll find, is that you start going through rabbit holes, which is why it's important to remember to keep your work concise. At this point, you're still looking at building your work up though, and you're trying to get more facts to support your case on whatever you're trying to persuade or inform about. I find this to be the most enjoyable step, and I also like learning from opposing views, because the way I think is not the way that a lot of other people think, and that's kind of cool. And that brings us to step 4, which is polishing up your work and really applying the processes that I talked about of clarity, conciseness, and certainty, and critically examining what you've written down. Writing turns into rewriting, and there's a lot of that. But that's a good thing. It means your work's getting better. So at this point, you've got a structured draft, your research is completed, and you're just working on improving the way you're presenting it, really. I start with clarity and make sure that my work is readable and understandable, has a good flow to it. And that really, at the end of the day, the message that I'm trying to convey is received. This is where the help of other people can really go a long way, because you're looking at your writing through your own biases and views and your own understanding. It's a great idea to get someone else or a couple other people involved at looking it over for you. The next thing I do is cut out any words, sentences, paragraphs that are redundant, repeated, or just don't serve the purpose of whatever I'm writing. But how I get rid of them is maybe a bit different than most, where I don't delete, I cut, and I paste in an archive section at the bottom of the document. It's not that what I wrote wasn't important overall, but it just didn't serve the ultimate final product. And I don't want those thoughts to go to waste. As you start cutting down, this may be difficult for you because of what is known as the endowment effect. People are more likely to retain an item they already own than to buy the exact same item if they don't have it. Try cleaning out your garage or closet, and you'll probably see a bit of this effect at play. Writing cleanly is writing leanly. And finally, I check my work for certainty. I fact check different pieces, find references for things. To the best of your knowledge, you're going to want to certify that what you wrote is truthful and factual. Some parts of it are probably going to be opinion, and that's fine, as long as they come across that way. And once that's all done, I find it's really helpful to get a proofreader or two to go over your work. And as I said, writing is rewriting, so you're going to be doing a lot of that. But why? Why all of this? Why does it matter? Why does the thinking process matter? Why does the writing process matter? Well, if you're trying to write better to think better, then I think you've got to be good at both. Or at least work on getting good. I'm working on getting good. At the end of the day, the answer to the why question I think is this. When you put your thoughts on paper, you freeze them, and that allows you to think about them. This is metacognition, or thinking about thinking. And the brain has only so much working memory, so by pulling the thoughts out of your head, you can start critically examining them without being overwhelmed. I've given you some ideas on how to write better, think better, but how do you apply this? The way I like to do it is by writing a bit each day. Some people use a journal, like a 5-minute journal. Other people write on applications and things like that. As long as you're writing your thoughts down, then I think you're on your way. Once you've journaled and written your thoughts down, think about them, analyze them, look for clarity, conciseness, and certainty, and make changes. You may have your own process that works for you. The key here is to do what works for you. I'm giving you some ideas that you can incorporate into your own writing process or your own thinking process, but at the end of the day, it comes down to looking at your thoughts and trying to think better. Writing is an amazing invention, and I want to leave you with this quote. What an astonishing thing a book is. A flat object made from a tree on which dark squiggles are imprinted. But one glance at it and you're inside the mind of another, maybe somebody dead for 1,000 years. Across the millennia, they speak directly to you. Carl Sagan. Alright, that's the video. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. I'm on a journey here of trying to post 25 videos this year at minimum, so that's once every 2 weeks. I'm going to keep posting about new ideas on how to think better, do better, and be better. And hopefully I get better as I do this, my writing and my video making. Got a long way to go, but as long as I'm helping at least one person, I've done what I want to do. So, thank you.